Hello, YouTube. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to go live yet. I don't know if this mic is working because it went live before I meant for it to, so I didn't get to see the test. But we're just going to proceed like it did and hope for the best. It rhymes, so you know it must be true. Okay, so how are you doing today? I'm doing all right. I'm doing better now. I've had a little bit to eat. Um, I would really, really just adore it if doing this today was able to make me 10 or 15 bucks so I could leave doing this and feel good about eating. But I don't actually need to sit that close to the camera anymore, do I? And, we'll leave Panera there because Panera does me they do me a lot of good. Um, maybe we can get them to, maybe we can get them to sponsor what we're doing here and they can feed me, uh, to keep these happening. They don't have to. I'm not trying to leverage that. Whatever. I would like it if this could generate me like 15 bucks so I could go in here and spend it on Panera, is what I'm saying. But I've been playing Final Fantasy VII, as you know. We burned through Act 1 pretty quick, but my microphone fucked up pretty bad through most of it. And so you can't really hear what I was talking about. And I was doing a lot of talking about what we were experiencing and how I really don't think that that's a very well written game. I just really don't think it's very well written at all. So what we're going to do is we're going to recap Act 1 in good faith that having done so when I come to it tomorrow, having come to Chrono Trigger today, I still don't need to be that close to the camera. I keep forgetting that the microphone I'm talking into is down here, not over there now. Anyway, I hope it's being captured. I have no way of knowing until somebody jumps in here. I guess I could have done a test run. We're going to find out. If it didn't work, we'll do it again and we'll figure out why it didn't work. I don't know why it wouldn't. It says it's on. But yesterday it wanted me to plug in the mic just in case. That's a tight fit. It wanted me to do that before it would register it. So maybe just cover my bases and do what worked yesterday. It doesn't give me any kind of indicator. Not anywhere on the screen. There's this. It tells me that it's being used. Yeah, it disconnected me even when I went to look to make sure that the right microphone was working. So I don't know. I'm just gonna hope for the best. And we're gonna talk about Final Fantasy VII. So Final Fantasy VII opens terribly. It just opens awful on this long shot of this girl with brown hair and braids and a red outfit with like sparkling green shit around her, and then it cuts to a long shot of a future dystopia city as the 1990s would understand future dystopia, and then you're this spiky blonde haired guy that's jumping off of a train into a group of people that you evidently don't know but who know you very well, and it's supposed to be jarring and it's supposed to be confusing because the idea is that you're a fish out of water. And I understand what they were thinking, having beaten the game before, but the conceit of this first playthrough is that we haven't played the game. For anybody who's watching me who's never played the game, right? And so just up front, within 7 minutes, I'll just tell you right now that if I had been tasked with directing or editing that game and it were a movie and it were easy to do this, I would have cut the entire first act. I would have cut all of that, all of it, every single bit of it. And now I understand from an RPG character development, as far as your character progression, materia grinding, all of these things, they need that first act because these are established heroes when they come into the game. They start at level 6 or level 7, right? You usually start at level 1 or level 2. So the idea is that you're already capable of doing this thing, and it's not really going to throw much of a challenge at you, which is fine. It's a tutorial dungeon. But also, none of the story, even including picking up Red 13, none of the story up until you leave Midgar is necessary to your understanding of what's going to happen in the later game. And in fact, none of it is played out so well and written so intensely that you need it. The characters all do stupid things that show that while they're established, D&D archetypes, they're established heroes. These are people who are capable of doing this thing at a greater than average level. They're also very stupid. They're very dumb. They do very stupid things constantly. Barrett is a terrible leader. If it weren't for the fact that the game says that he's the leader of this group, I wouldn't understand how he became leader of the group, because the people around him, he treats like dog shit. And he looks different than them, and he clearly has a backstory that we haven't explored yet. Now, I know the backstory, and I'm going to tell you, I'll just spoil it for you now. When we get to it, I'm going to be annoyed. I'm going to be just as dissatisfied then as I am now. That's a bummer for them. Anyway, so you leave blowing up this reactor because that's what you've been told. You've been told that you're a soldier, right? Which we get is like this super soldier. We're not told yet exactly what it means, but we have this idea because we've read the manual that it's some kind of genetically altered super soldier. Okay, so you're that thing and we get it. Fine, whatever. Moving on. You blow up this reactor because you've been hired by these people to blow up this reactor because you're a badass. Okay, fine. It turns out that you were made a badass by this company and that you have some vendetta against the company. Okay, none of that is played out in the dialogue. It's all given to you in expositionary text boxes, which I wouldn't call dialogue. The characters don't talk like real people. And then like Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge, I don't understand why they're in the group at all. I don't understand why they're here, except that the developer, the writer of the story scenario, needed them there because they're not good at what they do. They're bumbling, they're incompetent, and they don't get along with Barrett very well. Or rather, Barrett treats them like trash. And so if they're willing to be treated like trash by this guy who hates Shinra, what's the difference in being treated like trash by that guy and being treated like trash by Shinra? Like, legitimately, what's the difference in being treated like trash by your girlfriend and being treated like trash by your manager at work? What's the meaningful difference? Where do you ever get a break? When do these people ever get a break? That was what I kept thinking. So you go to this town, and then these people are just constantly teaching you how to acclimate to a city that you're supposed to have been a part of, made a super soldier by it. Hello there, I'm not going to stop for what I'm doing, and goodbye there. That's why you're supposed to have been made a super soldier in this city. And then these people are telling you minutia about how to get along in this city. And it's like, we're supposed to be a fish out of water because we're a JRPG character, and we're hyper conscious of how popular the Zelda franchise is. And we're aware, in fact, hyper conscious that this is the only JRPG that's going to be represented on effectively release with the Sony PlayStation. And so we're conscious of all of these things, and we're the writers now and the developers of Final Fantasy. We're Sony. We're conscious of the fact that we're doing 3D for the first time in a Final Fantasy game. Oh my god. Whatever they just released is making me cough and sneeze. These people over here at the funeral home just released a bunch of gas into the air. Now they're doing like a pyre or something. It just got me coughing and sneezing. And yeah, I haven't been sitting out here smoking. Anyway. I don't remember where I was. These people are telling you things that you should know. And it's like, we're hyper conscious of the fish out of water trope in Japan and JRPGs in general, which isn't something that Final Fantasy usually leans into. They did it with Terra because they had such a complex world that Terra was walking into. But her story made sense why she had amnesia. What right? The the amnesiac, or like even in Final Fantasy V when Cecil turns out to be an amnesiac, like these things aren't necessarily fish out of water as a trope. They're necessary storytelling devices to get the audience familiar with the world, right? And so we're not going to talk about later Final Fantasies where they get this right. You understand? We're focusing on Final Fantasy VII, and we're going to talk about how they got it right in the earlier Final Fantasies in this video, and then I'm playing 1 now, and even in 1, your characters don't know that they're the Warriors of Light. They don't even know that the Warriors of Light existed. They just happen to have these crystals and walk into this town and talk to this king. You understand? So the fish out of water is a trope that Final Fantasy, that Sony had managed really well until Final Fantasy VII. And then here comes Cloud, who's supposed to be this super badass who also has these memory problems that are fine. We accept that and we go on. But then it starts to get uncanny and annoying when they start giving you dialogue options when you talk to Tifa, and they don't make sense. Her responses don't make sense, right? So I would have cut all of that. I would have put all of it behind optional cutscenes, so that none of it was reliant on the level of your character, and I would have just started the game where we're going to be. The everything that's going on with Eris is annoying, especially the way I played it. You have to, so like, this is a complaint that Final Fantasy VII falls into, but it's a trope or a cycle of mistakes that BioWare made a whole career out of, made a whole decade out of, and it's the going into the game knowing that you're going to be picking a romantic partner. So Persona 5. Maybe it's just a thing with like even making romantic or making relationships an option, right? That, well, you want somebody to fall in love with. Maybe that's just a thing, and maybe I just don't like that as a thing in general. But one of the things that I don't like with picking your dialogue options with these women is that if you role play Cloud the way Cloud is, you're punished. But if you go in role playing Cloud like you're you trying to get one of these two women, Tifa, maybe even Yuffie or Eris, to fall in love with Cloud, you're rewarded with what you wanted if you did the thing. And I don't know that I find that anything but tacky and hopelessly contrived. I can't role play the character and be rewarded for it. It's like they're punishing me for the character they wrote, and I don't like that at all. So I can't say whether Final Fantasy VII, as we move into the second act, into literally Disc 2, is going to continue doing that with Cloud, because I genuinely don't remember, because I've never clicked any of that. I've never read any of the text boxes, except for this playthrough. So I really couldn't even tell you whether the story was good or bad, because I always just relied on whether other people liked it and what other people said about it. And everybody else likes it. Well, so far I'm not enjoying it. Everything that you do is at Sector 6, where you go to the brothel town. Everything there is so painfully adult and tone deaf for the rest of the game, especially the characters involved in it. Like that the women think it's cute and funny is weird to me. It's weird to me for 1990s politics. I found everything about Don Corneo just tacky and tasteless, unless what they were trying to do, because he acts and looks and carries himself just like our current president. And so if they're trying to make a statement about the Love Hotel convention as it existed in the 1990s in Japan, from the future, knowing what it's like now, I can understand where they're coming from, especially if they were trying to like put the, and I see you there, thank you for being here and thank you for the like, especially if they were trying to put some of the onus on America, especially our current president in 1997 and before. I can understand that, but it's all done with this weird, almost tongue-in-cheek, like this is all funny and cute and still for kids. That maybe it's a Japan thing. Maybe it's the difference in being Japanese and being an American, and then maybe it's the difference in being the product of sexual violence and not. I'm not sure. I really don't know. But I found the whole thing really just unplayable. Like, get me out of this. Stop reading what these people are saying. None of this was put to paper by a healthy mind, and I don't want this healthy mind to influence the way I think about this specific subject. And then I guess there's actually a side quest where you can get into the Honeybee Hotel before you meet Don whatever. And I guess I was watching a whole documentary about it. You could find it, and I highly recommend you form your own opinions and not trust me on anything. But they were talking about how you can get in there, and that people have gotten into the ROM, and they've figured out that there was this extended side quest where you could actually be serviced in the hotel, and the director or the management team, somebody was like, this is beyond the pale. This is a line too far to cross in a game for teenagers, for teenage children. Sure, this is the adult Final Fantasy, and that's what it feels like. The whole time it just feels, I said this in one of my recordings that the audio got busted, but the whole time playing this game, it just feels like, what's the name of that band? Linkin Park. It feels like Linkin Park's Meteora. Like deeply, deeply immature people telling me that now we're writing our grown-up phase. We're entering our grown-up phase. And it's like, your grown-up phase is decidedly immature. And what does that say about me, that I was willing to take you seriously? And I don't know. I don't know what this game says about me. And I don't know that I like that. I like Cloud. I like Cloud a lot. I've always liked Cloud a lot. Every time I've played the game, I'm like, Cloud is a solid character who makes sense in the world, especially if you roleplay him as he's written in the manual and as he speaks of his own volition, because he's an only kind of silent protagonist. But Tifa is literally just her figure. She has no character. She's no consistent character. She instantly subordinates herself to every masculine figure on screen. And I know that's a Japanese thing. It's a cultural thing. I really need to be careful not to criticize Japan for their women being like that. But also, this was clearly written by men who aren't trying to think, okay, well, what would a woman who's not like that do, right? Or what would a woman that I don't automatically like because she's a paper doll cutout of a human being, how would she behave? And neither Tifa nor Aerith, however you want to call her, neither of them to this point has behaved that way. The mythology behind the ancients is so obviously Judaism that it's annoying. They're Jewish druids, which I find annoying. But you just move on because you accept the world building. On some point, you just have to accept the creator's, not intention necessarily, but the fact that the creator was trying to be creative with motifs that they had available to them that they didn't know enough about to know that they were being insensitive. Like, at some point, you just have to move on with that knowledge and understand that they don't mean to be racist. They're just trying to take what they think are paper doll cutouts. But that's not how, like, adults don't play with paper dolls, for example. That's just a fact. Like, before the 1980s, adults did not play with children's toys. They did not play with things that were sold and marketed to children because they're not children anymore. But video games, they're a pastime for rich children. So as the 90s are approaching the 2000s, this studio is hyper aware that I didn't read it because it's just too close to the topic, and I wasn't sure I was going to make this video. Thank you for sticking through this for so long. But I did see a headline the other day that someone has recently done the demographics to find the average age of Final Fantasy lovers, of its fans, and I'm sure it's around 38. I'm sure it's right in the middle 30s because of Final Fantasy VII, because it was the one that broke away with the predecessors. But the games before that, the SNES and the NES, were marketed to children. Adults played them because they had children, or because they had played the earlier, not necessarily consoles either, because they had played earlier video games when they were children, and they just continued that tradition. They continued that convention of doing that pastime. But it really is a pastime. That's why that's why we're doing this, right? We're justifying that I'm not passing the time, right? Sort of patting myself on the back. But everybody, all the adults that play video games, kind of feel this way, that I gotta justify doing this by commenting on it like a philosopher would do the fictional book that they're reading, or whatever. We understand it's fiction. We understand that it's a pastime. I was talking earlier, thank you for the question, Whimsical Wizard of Niravira. I was talking earlier about how Persona 5, with the relationship thing, I forgot that you can go into, that you actually, every time you play Persona 5 after the first time, you're going in to get a different relationship. Just for me, I haven't looked at the strategy guides or whatever to see what that nets you and whether the game is finally good. The game is so fun to play that I literally suffer through grinding the relationships, because the game is so fun to play. I want to see if finally there's a relationship that will unlock the fun version of the game for me, the fun story, if that makes sense. But the ending is always the same every time I've beaten it. So yes, the Shin Megami Tensei games are games I'm very interested in. Persona 3 was one I had to quit playing because the whole gun to the head thing, it got too much for me. As a survivor, it just got too much to watch. Every single time I chose an action resulted in that. It became too much. But like, thank you for asking me that question. I have to get through this with Final Fantasy, because I don't know how long my battery is going, or Final Fantasy VII. I don't know how long my battery is going to last, and these are thoughts that I've held in my head for 20 years, because for 20 years I thought it was better to just be quiet rather than contradict a popular opinion. And I'm not here to make money for contradicting the popular opinion. I just got to get it out. I got to get it out sometime before I die. Hopefully you understand. Thank you for being here, really. I was so impatient. The whole sequence with Shinra Tower, by the time you get to the top, Barrett and Tifa have done so many stupid things. So many stupid things. Talking to the mayor made me so angry that I get it. I, the gamer, realize that this is going to go badly. I get that. I get their foreshadowing that this is going to go badly. But like, in real time in my life, I had played Metal Gear Solid, PlayStation 1, before I played the first Final Fantasy VII, before I played it the first time as a kid. And so I can't separate the two games, because for a section of Final Fantasy VII, they're about the same thing, infiltrating this evil corporation that's trying to do this thing and stopping them from ending the world for environmental reasons as the employee of a paramilitary counter-government organization. Same plot structure to begin with. Not the same characters. Cloud's kind of the same character, except the foreshadowing, I'm not going to spoil Act 2, but the foreshadowing is that you actually get with one of these girls that you get to flirt with, whereas Snake obviously never gets to get with anybody until the end of the game. You might, what's her name, Marl or whatever? I know that's Chrono Trigger, which I'm going to play later today, but the good ending of that game is saving the girl so you get to sleep with somebody other than your hand at the end of presumably at the end of the story. And whatever, that's tacky. It's also the 90s. There was a whole a whole conversation that happened separate from this game and this conversation circa 2012 and after about that. And I'm not trying to have it because that's a long time after 1997. But it's a relevant conversation to bring up because they were right. They were right. And they had decades of evidence to back up their argument. That's why when Square Enix got a hold of Lara Croft, she was a different kind of character than Tifa. And that's why when they remade, I haven't played the Final Fantasy VII remake. I'm homeless, if you don't know this. I do everything I do is off my phone and off the goodwill of my audience, goodwill of strangers. So I don't have access. I haven't had access to a modern console since the beginning of the PS4 era. But whatever. I watch other people play, and I try not to form opinions because I haven't played them myself. But man, I tell you what, like even just watching Donkey play the new Donkey Kong game, I don't know how an adult could take themselves seriously playing this obviously child's game. To my point about Final Fantasy and Square at the time being hyper conscious that they're making games on an adult console for late teen budding adults. I don't think I finished that argument. Nintendo is a console for children. Mario barely has any dialogue, so he can't say anything that might accidentally be perceived as sexual in nature. For example, Link never speaks, and he never gets the girl that's not Zelda, even though all of the women in that franchise throw themselves at him. It's fan service. And all of this is weird Japanese stuff that's cultural, and I'm not criticizing it negatively because I don't understand it. Doesn't mean that it's something that's harmful to its consumers. By the time you get to the top of Shinra's tower and they show you Genova, they have given you no information about what that thing is. That moment is only interesting on your second playthrough. This is why I keep making the joke in Chrono Trigger. Like, I am into anime. I don't get to watch a lot, but I mourned Akira Toriyama, is that his name? I mourned the passing of the director and creator of Dragon Ball Z by watching all of Dragon Ball Z, by binging all of Dragon Ball Z and as much of Dragon Ball as I could before I just finally got bored of it. Your question is relevant because the pacing of the story is anime as fuck. You're right. It's anime as fuck because anime is about watching it over and over and over again and seeing it out of sequence. When you see it out of sequence, you want to go back and you want to read the manga, or you want to buy the DVDs. I entirely understand that. My frustration comes from the fact that, and I talked about this a little bit. My mic was busted, probably. I talked about this a little bit, and I should thank you for bringing me there. That's a game where you can game over, and it was on a system that didn't have autosaves and didn't come with memory cards. So a lot of why I'm leaning in, it's obviously a fun game. I got through all of the bullshit, right? And I got through it multiple times to where I'm getting here. It's a game you can game over in, and it's a game you can game over in without a memory card. And so at the time in the 90s, I knew a lot of people who noped all the way the fuck out on that game because of the save point situation. There were a lot of people who noped out on the first Final Fantasy because you had to press the reset button and the power button at the same time when you turned off your game, or it would corrupt your save. Like Square, but also Square and Enix, and then the later merger, they're very familiar with people bailing on their product because it's not Mario. I get that. But I'm kind of leaning into, these people, I always thought they were very wrong. Oh, no, it's a fine game. It's fine. Just deal with the frustration. And now I'm like, well, I kind of understand their point. Because if you're not invested in anime and you don't understand that sometimes an anime will go 3 seasons before they give you anything that's relevant to the plot that the fucking guy, the creator, is trying to give you. I am bad about that as a writer. That's kind of where I'm trying to go. If I were writing this, I would have been self-aware enough at some point to look at it and go, oh, all right, all of this needs to be buried in optional stuff that they can find on later playthroughs to explain the meat of the story that I'm trying to tell here is the conflict between Cloud and Sephiroth. But at no point have they told us that the reason that Cloud is collapsing to the ground and having this voice speak to him, because Cloud doesn't know. I understand that. I am trying to straddle a fence and reconcile two arguments in real time. I'm not doing a good job about it. I know that too. I understand that the fans who played the game and are in love with it are going to go, right, they can't tell you, because if they tell you, they're going to spoil the surprise. I get that. And so I'm just reacting to this game in real time, right? And so they haven't told me who's speaking into my head. I know the presenter, I know that's Sephiroth, and I know it gets very cool. But we're however many 6 or 7 hours into the game. We're one major game sequence into the game, and they haven't even given me clues other than that this guy, or maybe the phantom of this guy, has killed the president, and that we didn't get to see it or be involved in it. And yeah, spoilers, you should know that by the title, I think. That we didn't get to see it is mysterious and very interesting in a movie, because it's going to happen over the course of like 45 seconds. But in this medium, it's very boring, because I know that it's going to take me another 40 hours before they give me anything about it. And so I understand the anime of it all, that it's all in keywords and subtext, and that they're throwing a lot of text bubbles at us, because every panel of a manga should have text bubbles in it so that you feel like you're reading. I understand that. And you're right. You are right. If you're wanting to apologize for Final Fantasy VII and go, but it's an anime. You're totally right. But anime fundamentally is a Saturday morning cartoon, and that's that push-pull between the adult and the child. It's like, yeah, you've got these people who are sophisticated enough to watch adult-leaning anime. Like, I kept thinking as I was watching it, I kept thinking about Witchblade. Isn't that the one in it called Witchblade? I kept thinking with the girl who's basically naked, but she kills a whole bunch of people, so it's an adult anime. I kept thinking about the push-pull between that, because that was on Toonami, which is being watched by 13-year-olds. So it's got this extremely adult theme, but it's for children. And so you've got that push-pull where you're trying to grow these kids up into adult themes so that there needs to be a bridge. And I don't think they did it very well. I don't think they were conscientious of that fact in anything but the presentation. I think they built an adult world and then they presented it for children, and they lost their thematic push-pull. Like even that moment where they introduced Red 13 and Eris in this container, and Hojo is explaining to us that he's put them in there so that they will combine their genes. And it's just like, why in that manner? Why is that the manner in which you're doing it? It's just so... it's childish, even in the conception of the experiment. And so on some level, it's almost like I'm approving of a child telling this story. It's almost like watching, it feels, honestly, thematically, it feels like watching Axe Cop. Have you ever seen that show? Axe Cop was this animator, has this, I don't know how you would phrase this particularly imaginative son who was writing these stories about Axe Cop. And so he animates them, and they have a child's logic and a child's presentation. And so I'm annoyed. That's where we're at with Final Fantasy VII. I'm annoyed. I understand that it is a beloved game, and I absolutely love the franchise, but through Act 1, I'm annoyed. I like Cloud a lot, and that is the only character I like a lot. Like, Red 13 seems cool. Like, he does the whole, oh, I'm going to pretend to be aggressive so that guy separates us. I really don't understand what Red 13 was thinking about being aggressive with Aerith. And then his explanation is, oh, I was only pretending to be aggressive, so I had this opportunity. And it's like, okay, she was in danger. Like, we understand that erotic danger is the greater danger, right? So like even Red 13's interior thinking as regards this woman that he's in the proximity of is so weird and backward and upside down that I just have to say, okay, well, that's just what a Japanese person, but then there's this whole thing that happened after the Japanese wrote it called localization. And so there was this English speaking, probably American person who was given all these Japanese words and said, okay, make this understandable for an American 13-year-old. And he chose to translate that section as, well, I decided to be violent instead of to try to penetrate her because that would make Barrett want to get her out of there. And it's like, nope, they wanted her out of there for the first thing. You didn't have to do anything. If you had like sat down on the far end of the thing and been like, I'm not even going to engage with her. They wanted her out because they wanted her out, Red. Your internal logic is so fucked up. I don't want you in my party. And so like, it's like, I understand the trope because I've played the first 6 Final Fantasies walking into it. And thank you for still being here. But I've played the first 6, right? Canonically, I've played the first 6. So I understand the trope of gathering all of these broken people together as a broken person and then going forth into the world and doing something beautiful. I understand that. Like the found family of anime, of Saturday morning cartoons, of Dungeons and Dragons, they're not doing anything wrong. I'm not saying, wow, these are deeply fucked up people. But I am going, wow, did nobody at any point stop and go, what does this say about you, Tetsuya Nomura? Like, what do your characters say about you? At some point, someone did. Someone had to. Because I'm a huge Tetsuya Nomura fan. He was the character designer and some of the scenario writer for this game. I don't remember the name of the actual writer and lead scenario designer, because is it Hironobu Sakaguchi? The original, these names are all, I can't remember any of them. The original Final Fantasy guy basically stepped back. He'd made 6 games, transitioning to 3D. I was talking this morning about management. And so the project became much bigger. And so he became the project manager, right? And so at some point, somebody stepped in with Tetsuya Nomura and said, hey, maybe we should like look inside. Yes. Yeah. Magic the Gathering and Pokemon cards are a big part of why I'm thinking about this, because the mechanics, the mechanics of it all work so well that I want the story. I want the story to make sense. Yeah. I want the story to be better. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. When it was just the one guy, yeah, I still play trading card games. Like I have a friend who's really into Hearthstone, and I wish I had the money to be good at it and spend the time playing it, because I love just mechanical games that don't have a fucking story. Like the story is we sat down and agreed to kill one another in this game. That's what I like. And so that's, as I've gotten older, I've learned that more and more and more and more about myself. And so I just have a lot of opinions about JRPGs because they tend to have that thing on lock. And then the rest of it, the getting me between escalating difficulties of combat encounter, seems to be tortured, is how I would describe it. Absolutely tortured in these stories that they're trying to tell. And so I think I'm at the end, because well, maybe I'm not, because even Rufus, I'm certain that my encounter with Rufus, I'm trying to recap like 6 hours of gameplay as quickly as possible off the dome with no notes. And thank you for your questions, because they are helpful, actually. Rufus is a character that I don't understand why he gets a pass. I don't understand why he gets a pass. Because they haven't established his dad. I mean, they've repeatedly told us that his dad is like the worst thing since moldy sliced bread. But like, I don't understand how he's an improvement, because the things that Rufus immediately does aren't improvements. He establishes himself as the exact same kind of autocratic tyrant that his dad was. And I don't understand. One of the things that pisses me off, like if they were going to do this first act, actually give me how Midgard came into power with all of this. If you're going to have me go through this tower, what should have happened, here, let me just rewrite the game real quick, and then I'll call that an ending. What should have happened, as me and Barrett, as Cloud and Barrett, are going through this, and these people are solving all of the puzzles that I should be solving to unlock all of the doors, and they're doing all of the Star Wars Episode 4 New Hope, breaking into the Death Star of it all for me, because the writers of this game, I guess, had never conceived of an idea that there might be a Rogue One. They never thought to write Rogue One for themselves. I find that annoying. But anyway, as all of this is playing out around me, what should have been happening is Barrett should have been explaining to me why he doesn't like Midgar, because he should have been explaining to me the last 2 or 3 or 5 or however many decades it has taken for President Shinra to fuck the world in the way that he is. And Cloud going, I know and don't care. And then Barrett being so obsessive about it that he can't stop. And then it turning out that that's why Jesse and Biggs and Wedge are in his thing, because he can't fucking stop. He just can't stop about it. He's a dick, but he just can't stop. And he knows, and he just can't let it go. And that's why they're with him. Because they're like, you know what? Neither can we. These would then be characters that make sense to me. And I would understand why Shinra is a problem. I don't know what Mako is. I don't know what it was like before electricity, but I know that electricity seems to be pretty cool, and even the people in the slums live pretty good lives. So even like 1970s, before the cleanup in New York, the people of New York live pretty good lives. That's why that's why the city was a shithole, because even the people at the very bottom of society didn't think they lived shitty lives. If the people in the slums of Midgar think they live shitty lives, they should be talking about that. And Cloud should be hearing about it. And it should be in Cloud's head to, I have all of this soldier stuff. I have all of this backstory with Shinra. I should intervene. But at no point does Cloud intervene. Like even when Eris is kidnapped, it's Barrett who chooses to intervene. So like they even assumed, the writers even assumed that they were not giving the character enough of an impetus to play the game for the player to play the game outside of the fact that they bought it. And that is a real problem in game narrative today. And that's why I'm harping on it. Hey, second person that just joined in, I was just closing up. I'm harping on it because the things that Final Fantasy VII is getting wrong, we're still getting wrong because people let Final Fantasy VII have a pass because it was the only fucking game they had. It was the only game they had. And so every JRPG is compared to Final Fantasy VII by my generation because it's the only fucking thing they have to compare it to. Even 8, 9, and 10, even though Final Fantasy II establishes that we are doing different themes, we are doing different combat mechanics, we are doing different characters, we are doing a different story in a different universe. None of this is connected. They expected 8 and 9 and 10 to be connected to 7 in some way, when the only connection is the writer. It's the writer, the scenario developer, and hopefully the look inside that they did to themselves that maybe those were themes we should have left off the table, or that should have hit the cutting room floor and become optional content. Final Fantasy IX, I said I wasn't going to do this, but I'm wrapping up. Final Fantasy IX does this better with the, I don't remember what they called it, but Star Ocean has it where you can hit a button prompt during certain cutscenes, or during, like, you walk across a certain spot in a city and it's like, hey, optional cutscene. That's how Final Fantasy VII should have handled itself. And if you're more versed in these games, like if you're more, like if you had a Sega, for instance, if you played the Star Ocean series, what you're telling me is they didn't do that deliberately so they weren't aping Star Ocean, because they were aping Star Wars and Dragon Quest so much. If they had aped Star Ocean, what are they actually doing that's unique to them? And fair enough. What became unique to the Final Fantasy series was exactly what we love about it, that it's a fucking long ass manga series, and they'll get there to telling you why you're playing it eventually. I just would have done it very differently. Not that my writing is different, right? I'm trying to figure out, even by doing this, I'm trying to figure out how to make my writing better than this thing, and I'm stuck on that. I don't know how. That's why we did this thought experiment. So thank you. I'm done. I got to go eat now. I got to charge my shit, and then we got to start playing some Chrono Trigger, where I can complain about these exact same things from the Enix development team that the Square team was cribbing from. Thank you for the well wishes. Thank you very much for being here. I hope to see you around. The whimsical Wizard of Niravira. I don't know if you have another name that I will recognize you by, but thank you for being here. I got to go eat. You guys have a good day, and you'll see more from me later today.